Hi, True Crime Grapevine fans. Oh my gosh, my voice has a little weird thing to it. I've been, after the holiday, a little under the weather. I was exposed to the vid. So, I took a negative test today, but you know, negative test one day, positive the next. Anyways, I'm taking my zinc, so hopefully not. Let's see, we've had, I have to go through my cases, people. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is our 6th case. We are up to the Quinton Simon case. So, we have somebody arrested. Here's to that. All right. I was talking in our last case, Idaho 4, the Moscow murders, that even when it seems obvious, it takes a while. So, it was over from October 5th, Quinton, a 20-month-old, went missing from his home in Savannah, Georgia, and his mom had a sketchy story. She didn't take him to the babysitter as normal. There was some weird excuse, and then, oh, now he's missing. And within a week or so, the mom, first she was screaming at the babysitter, and then she was saying, no, my daughter, he drowned and my daughter wasn't watching him, and she put him in a dumpster. What? Well, it turned out to be true, and they went and looked. It took them over 5 weeks to find the baby. Oh, excuse me. So this is a little difficult, to discuss. He was ID'd yesterday, Monday the 28th, so we definitely know that the remains, it was bones, I believe, found in the landfill. The FBI searched for 5 weeks. The FBI in Chatham County searched for 5 weeks in the landfill. They did find remains, and they found remains last week, and Leilani Simon, 22, she was arrested on the 21st, a week ago Monday. And then this Monday, he was ID'd. It was him. So there is a preliminary hearing. It is scheduled for January 11th. So next year, 2023. She had her first hearing on Wednesday, so she was arrested on the 21st. She had her hearing on Wednesday, the 23rd, and she waived her right to appear, but she did enter a not guilty plea. Now, the judge said that the court was unable to consider bond because how their court system works is that's like a pleading court, and they're unable to deal with bond in a federal crime. So they have to wait until she goes to the federal crime court, so in January, to talk about any bond. So she doesn't have bond right now. Her counsel was a public defender, but that public defender, whose name is June Fogel, she said she will not be representing her, and we don't know why. Perhaps she has a child the same age. She has some conflict, it appears. Or maybe the family has hired an attorney, or a high-named attorney has decided that they want to take on this case. We don't know. But Leilani will be represented by a different attorney moving forward. So the recording office, the recorder's court, I just wrote that handles just the initial appearances, and the superior courts are the trial courts, and those are the ones that hear. So on January 13th of 2003, we will hear what happens to Leilani. I mean, unfortunately, she never should have been in this position. Why do I say that? Leilani bore 3 children. She had just had a third weeks before Quinton went missing. Each child, according to, as far as I know, according to what I read in the press, was born addicted to drugs. She was still doing drugs. She had a drug problem. Her mother had custody of her first 2 children because of the drug problem. There is a epidemic of drugs, and if you are hooked on drugs, I mean, I don't even really think it's anybody's. I don't think we can assign fault or blame, because there were a lot of other outside influences glad to get people hooked on drugs, in my opinion. So I don't think it's like just an individual choice. There are circumstances beyond a person's control. But the mother left to go to another state to take a job and left the daughter with the husband, and I guess figured maybe it would work out okay. But the daughter was basically still in charge of the 3 kids, 2 of which she had lost, and the third, which had been born addicted to drugs, and probably she would have lost, and her mother would have gained custody of the 3rd child. Maybe in that situation you take the kids away. Maybe you force the fathers to, hey, this is your child too. I don't know why it was all the mothers. I mean, there's lots of different people to look at. Now the fathers of, especially Quinton's father, is obviously torn up. He lost his baby boy. There's no way to use logic to get out of this issue because of how it was created and what happened next. So, what can we learn from this, as I say? If someone's a drug addict, maybe they shouldn't be having kids once they have 2 that are taken away. Or if they have kids, maybe that child should be, if that child is drug addicted at birth, I don't know what Georgia's laws are, but why did that child go back into the home with, I don't understand that. So I think the state has some burden, personally. I mean, even though the mom had custody, the grandmother, did the state not check in to see that the mom was right there in the home, basically still being the mom? I don't know. And she can't be blamed because she's drug-addled. The grandmother needs to make money, and so she's put in why put people in that position? Take the children away, put them up for adoption when they're babies. There's plenty of people who want to adopt. That is my personal opinion. I think everybody should have the right to get clean. But this woman, baby, she wasn't even 26, which means her brain wasn't fully formed, which means basically she was still a baby, having baby after baby. It just seems like somewhere along the line we could have stopped this before it got to, and now there's a dead baby, and then we can all feel like high and mighty, like she's wrong, she should be put to death, she's bad, they're bad. They're not bad in a vacuum, right? If we knew the situation existed, I mean, the babysitter said the grandma was constantly asking her to check out the situation, and she was like, hey, the kids don't have food, hey, the kids are out. The other neighbors said the kids were out on the road. Everybody says, well, I don't want to be my brother's keeper. But then everybody says they're Christian, which the Bible says, be your brother's keeper. So I'm confused. I am confused. And there's a 20-month-old who is now just bones. So, I don't know. And that girl's 22. By the time she's 26 and her brain's fully formed, nobody wins in that situation, and that beautiful baby is gone, which many people would have willingly taken. So, I don't know. Nobody wins and everybody loses. And I really can't assign blame to any of them, because it seems like a situation that there were all these red flags, and I don't know what people thought was going to happen, but this is what happens. So everybody's a loser and nobody's a winner. All right, 7th case. The Delphi suspect. Okay, we're going to get into some legal stuff, people. So if you're not a legal eagle and you're not interested in the constitutional rights, you might want to check out. But this is very interesting. So Richard Allen is a suspect in Liberty German, and Abigail Williams, who were, I believe, both, I think Libby might have just turned 14 and Abby was 13. They were tweens, still in middle school, right before they went to high school. They had been catfished, like our 15-year-old in the first story I told you, with an account that they thought was a very good-looking he looked like he was about 15, so about their age, a little older, and told to go to this bridge in their local area. Turned out the account was controlled by, we're not sure. It was created maybe by this guy named Keegan Klein. It was on his phone, but he claimed his dad also had the password, and it looks like there might be a children of, to be YouTube friendly, children of the corn, but with a P, situation going on. Maybe a trafficking sort of situation, a group. Because now Keegan Klein was arrested for all the corn problem. And he has been in jail for like 3 years. Suddenly he cuts a deal. I mean, he doesn't get very much, but he gets like 5 counts dropped, and something's going on with his case, and then they arrest this Richard Allen. Richard Allen is charged, but doesn't know why. Everything is sealed. Even before, like, even his arrest is sealed. His first appearance, nobody knows about until it's already over with. He is in one jail, transferred to another jail, transferred to a state facility, so he's transferred twice to a third place. He finally gets to public defenders, and the judge also between there drops out due to unexplained, like, fear. His explanation was like fear of social media, which, I mean, as we talked about in the Idaho case, like, social media can be crazy, but a judge is afraid of this. I think the judge is afraid of something bigger and more nefarious in his area, perhaps. Just my opinion. So, he goes to his first hearing with lawyers now. And he goes before Judge Fran Gull, who is now a special judge. And the lawyers, this was held on November 22nd, and the hearing was to unseal the warrant and the indictment. Now, why do we want that? So I spoke with my sister, the one who told me to start this podcast, so you can blame her. And she was like, yeah, but he's I'm going to say it with a D, a pedophile. You know, a children of, somebody who likes corn. Children of the corn material. And so who cares? Who cares? So here's the problem. When we start saying somebody is alleged to do something, so it's a horrific thing, whether it's murder or corn, and who cares about them? That's a slippery slope with constitutional rights, because who says that that person is really, like, they're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, and so to keep everything secret, like, what if everybody started to be charged in secret? Because, like, all these cases that we talk about are horrific. What if everybody's like, can't say, don't want to talk about it. We're not going to tell everybody why they're charged. We're just going to put them in jail. We're just going to keep them in jail, and we're just going to, we'll wait. Like, that is what, when we were pre-colonial America, that's what the English used to do. Throw somebody in the tower. You're against the king. You had this crime. You didn't have to be ever held accountable. Like, you didn't have to go to trial. We'll just put you in jail, and you can await trial for as long as we want. Who cares? You spoke out against whatever. You did something to offend somebody. So that is why all of our laws have to do with the transparency of the public to know. It's not just for true crime people, because this has been around since the Constitution was written, that when you charge somebody, it has to publicly be known. You have to say why. And they have a right to know who their accusers are. That's all part of this process. So to arrest somebody, and I told you last week, there was a lawyer in Indiana who looked, and the code actually that he was charged with says that it is a felony in connection with a worse crime, like having to do with, corn. So, again, I am not pro-corn at all. I am not pro people who like corn that is young. No. If you like youthful corn, I am not into you. I do think you should be belong in jail. But before you go to jail, I believe that you have the right, like everybody has a right. Because what if you are accused and you are not really guilty? And nobody thinks about that. I talk a lot about argumentation and points of view, and the law is made so that you have to find somebody guilty. It's not that they're guilty and that they have to prove their innocence. And in this case, that's what they're doing. Richard Allen now has to prove his innocence. So he walked into this courtroom and he looked at the families, which I find interesting, because if you were guilty, would you look right at the families? I'm not saying he is or isn't, but I find that psychologically interesting. And as I said before, I think there are multiple people, and that is what the prosecution said. The prosecution said, we need to maintain the secrecy because we still have an ongoing investigation. It will hurt the investigation, and here's the problem. If law enforcement is in the position of, once you charge somebody, then everybody else knows. And that puts law enforcement, it's like people say it's like 3D chess. Once you charge somebody, everybody else involved in the crime, if you think it's multiple people, they're all going to know what you know. So you don't want them to know what you know, right? You want to hold your cards close to your vest. Typically, that means when you arrest everybody all at once. You don't arrest them piecemeal, because now we don't know. So I had said that he came into court. It's very interesting that he did look at the family, which doesn't seem like something a guilty person would do unless he's psychotic, which we don't know. But his lawyers have stated quite clearly that, let's go back. They told the judge that the prosecutor's statements were conjecture and speculation, and that failing to release the probable cause affidavit could lead to the very chaos that the prosecutor is predicting. So the fact that they're not saying anything, and that the secrecy around this case is just heightening the public's interest in that. One defense attorney, Brad Rozzi, said that by continuing this pattern, they're just making this problem worse. So after the hearing, the other defense attorney, now this was off the record but outside to public, he declared, our client is the wrong guy. And he was standing outside the courtroom when he said this. He said that the sealed probable cause affidavit is flimsy and that you'd expect more than what I saw. And he related that Allen professed his innocence to him, emotionally so. So I guess that means truthfully so. And there will be, there's the next scheduled hearing to discuss if he gets bond, because he's also asking for bond. His petition to be let out on either a reasonable bond or on his own recognizance is, his attorneys say, because there is no proof of guilt and it's not evident. So if you remember when we talked about the presumption, the proof of guilt, evident, or presumption great, they talked about that a lot when we were talking about the Morphew case. That's one of the hurdles that a court has to reach to go on to trial, is if the evidence is great enough and the presumption of guilt is, if the presumption of guilt is great enough and the proof of the evidence is big enough. And they're saying it isn't. So again, we don't know. That's what's hard. It's easy to have a witch hunt and get out our pitchforks and say, yeah, this guy's guilty, because none of us like porn. Excuse me, I meant to say corn of, underage people. And if there's a trafficking ring, that was the one thing that the prosecutor said, was that they didn't want to let out this information because they think there's more people. So that's why I'm saying ring. That is my theory, my supposition only, my speculation only. No one said children of the corn trafficking ring, but I'm assuming that there's a bigger problem. In September of October, the federal district in Montana had all these children of the corn type problems that were coming out. So like, this is something that seems to be a lot of places, and I don't know if for some reason it's all coming to light. But anyways, this seems like this might have something to do with that. And in the commission of the corn problem there in Indiana, that a child died. Children, sorry, meaning Libby and Abby. So Richard Allen, he has something to do with at least the people involved, because he's somehow wrapped up in this. I'm not saying he's guilty, but the thing is, we don't know, because nobody knows what the cops have on him. And once you're arrested, that's part of that, so that we're not under any sort of like old English monarchy, just throw them in jail and let them waste. You're supposed to be able to see the light of day. There's transparency in the system so that we all feel confident that nobody's misjudging or misusing their authority. And I want to trust, I'm not anti, if you've paid attention to my channel, I'm not anti law enforcement. I'm very pro getting bad people off the streets. I'm just for transparency in the system, and it's weird if they weren't ready to arrest him because it would let other people know that they were on the tails and they shouldn't have arrested him, I guess, is my point. I don't know, that seems how it works in other cases. I don't know what's going on in Indiana. This all is very strange. It's not typical. I should say not strange, but it's not typical. We will find out more about Richard Allen in next year. So he's in jail until March.